Hello and welcome back. Thank you for joining me on this, what I'll call a very special edition of, Sean's Thoughts. And I'm Shawn with a W. Thank you so much for joining me. I really did want to showcase this screen that we're looking at. These are my I4C videos again. And although I have put the I4C videos up previously as a background, I love the artwork, and definitely on a night like this where it's dark, it definitely shines through for something to look at. But my phone wanted me to change orientation back, and it wasn't allowing me to put it horizontal. So unfortunately, this is just the way it is, and perhaps that's all it really needs to be. So thank you for sharing your attention with me. And as I said, this is going to be something a little different than what I've done before. See, before I've talked about things that I've learned about and things that I'm hearing and, sharing my reframing and my unique perspective on things. However, this time I want to share with you positive upcoming or incoming events that I believe will one day happen. And this isn't necessarily to say they're going to happen this week, next week, or, anytime in the near future. However, I do have trust that these particular amazing events, which I will discuss with you, will happen one day. And so it's often important, in my opinion, that we share and spend more time with wonder and pondering and those higher vibrations. I have a video called Wonder Illuminating Language where I illuminate the word wonder because spending time in that state of wonderment, of open to possibility essentially, and exploring it like a mind exercise definitely and truly does help detach yourself from whatever's holding you back and whatever is perhaps troubling you, whether it's a trauma or an expectation. It does pull you, in my experience, into the state of now, which when we spend more time in the now, we spend more time in the healing. So, without further ado, I want to do one piece of explaining is that I don't plan to explain too much, meaning that generally I will bring up a topic and then I'll be led to explain and backtrack. And with this one, I'm just going to kind of continuously let it flow. And if you don't understand or if you're unaware of something that I'm talking about, then definitely in the comments ask questions, because questions show or demonstrate self-reflection, and self-reflection is definitely the way to heal as well, to absorb more or take in more of what's being said. So with that being said, one of the things that I think, and interestingly enough, as I wrote down, as I sat down to write notes for this, because I wanted to write a list of the perhaps topics that we would be discussing, or not topics, but the things that I believe would be perhaps happening or will happen, however we want to look at it. Just seeing if that's going to change over to the next video or not. And it does. Perfect. So one of when I sat down to do this, I was listening to Ram Dass, one of his audios, and interestingly enough, it was an audio talking about meditation. And suddenly I realized, oh, that's the first one that I wanted to talk about, because my experience with meditation has perhaps been different than others, and I do believe that we are going to spend a lot more time meditating. And meditating doesn't necessarily mean sitting in complete silence and how you see the monks and stuff do it. Meditation is clearing the mind, and for everyone the meditation's different, but for me it's washing dishes became meditation, cutting grass with a lawnmower became meditation. And essentially I believe we're going to be spending a considerable amount of time more meditating. Most importantly, this will allow us to self-reflect, to consider and our own actions of the day perhaps, or different events, and definitely allow that time for inner reflection and more time to work on oneself. And why that's going to happen? Well, I believe it's going to happen because we're going to have more time. And I've often talked about this before. When we step back from all the dog eat dog world where money is the goal, when we step back and we don't have to worry about that, we are essentially able to free up more time so that we can have more time to do things such as meditation. And so, with that being said, money will become a considerably less important issue, perhaps not an issue at all eventually. Like eventually there is a transitional time where we do and will have to, not have to, but through, the way that we've all lived all of our lives, they say that you shouldn't ever just quit something cold turkey because it's challenging, and perhaps that's the experience that we will go through, or that many of us will go through, is that there will be a transitional time. Now, this journey that we're exploring, or that we're all on together, we're all essentially at different spaces of the board. So you can imagine it like a big game of Monopoly, and we're not all standing at the same spot. Some people are on Boardwalk, and some people are, back down at Vermont and Connecticut. So we're all at different areas, and there will be different, well, solutions for everyone in a sense. Yet society as a whole perhaps won't use money at all, or they'll transition slowly out of it in the years to come. And so that's important because a lot of people work and sacrifice a lot of their time and slave away earning money, and that definitely consumes a lot of our time. So with more time, as I said, we'll have things for the importance of meditation, and you can research it and look it up yourself if you feel meditation's good for you or not. Nonetheless, with that time, we'll be able to volunteer more. And volunteering more essentially means that we'll be contributing to our communities and strengthening our communities from the inside, rather than worrying about money to pay for things. Just imagine a community where everyone gets out and everyone does whatever needs to be done, such as picking up the trash. And if everyone in the community is picking up the trash, imagine that we'll all be cognizant of the trash, and therefore perhaps no one will drop trash anymore. So that's a very positive aspect of that. Now, I'm essentially talking pretty fast because I guess in a sense I am writing notes, so I'm not fully just streaming my thought from thought. But I did write stuff down, and when I was writing it down, I essentially, after the first page of notes, I dropped to the deep end, the good stuff. See, a lot of people are essentially challenged right now in the world that we're living in, and a lot of the things that I believe are going to eventually, perhaps someday, soon or later, happen, depending on where we're at. I always like to talk about, the far out amazing things. So, one of the most interesting analogies, I guess you could say, that I came up with is, if you're familiar with the movie Moana 2. And Moana 2, if I'm pronouncing that right, I always seem to get it wrong, is a cartoon about a little girl who turns up to be a bigger girl. And anyways, in the movie Moana 2, there's a character called Maui. And this particular character goes from being a fish to a whale to a fly to whatever it is. Like it shapeshifts. That's how I someday seeing us. And I say us because if you're listening to me right now, you resonate with me. And so therefore there is always the potential that us means all of us will have that experience. I believe that perhaps in the past we did have that experience, yet that transition between forms, perhaps in our lifetime, will be us. And to me, that is just super exciting to recognize that we will have the ability to be a lot more controlling with our form. Now, this is, as I said, off in the deep end. But just imagine that. Imagine being able to jump out of an airplane, not that we'll need airplanes anymore, and turn into a bird and then get soar above the water and then turn into a whale and splash it into the water and turn into a worm. And, you know, I love just imagining that and seeing it in my head. And I see it in my head mostly because I do have the images of that movie in my head. Our ability to live will be considerably longer. A lot of people base their life based on the 60 to 70 or 80 years that they could possibly live based on known expectations or known history. I do believe that we'll live considerably longer. The book, or sorry, not the book, the Bible talks about Noah living to 940 years old. And there's the sons of Abraham who had an extremely long lifetimes as well. Now, I can't quote any ages. I've only heard that, but nonetheless, I like to bring it up because it does showcase that we have had in the past, in our historical past, a lot longer lives than we have now. Obviously, things like telepathy, being able to communicate with each other without having to use our words. Using words are very restrictive because you have to interpret the words. You have your own perceptions and filters. And yet with telepathy, hearing each other, feeling each other's emotions even, will definitely help restore our ability to communicate with each other. The possibility or the reality of bilocating. It has been shown to happen in our past with different higher vibrational beings and saints. And bilocating, if you don't know, is the ability to move your physical form from one place to another. And so the way I was once described it is that we would have the ability to close our eyes, see where we're at, open it, and we've arrived. So wouldn't that be awesome? Remembering our past lives. See, I believe in an incarnation, and although I won't get into the details of incarnation, I believe that we've had past experiences. We've had past lives, from the lives of Lemuria and Atlantis and Tartaria and off planet, on planet, maybe even underground when we were there surviving the flood. Or now when I say we, I mean us as a human, as a Homo sapien collective, as our souls. And so remembering our past lives and perhaps learning the lessons that we had had or the experiences that we had had, reconnecting with our multi-dimensional selves. Now imagine that. Imagine being able to reconnect. Now, I've only recently heard that that might actually happen sometime within the next few years, or even perhaps next year for some people. I don't necessarily fully understand what it's all about. However, anything that allows me to expand my experience and basically detach from this matrix definitely is something that I would so vastly appreciate. Now, all of those are the good stuff, and there's a lot more. There's definitely a lot more that's happening, but take time to think about that. Take time to imagine just for yourself. What's the far out thing that you could see or choose or want or desire or feel that is possible, and then expand on that. See, I was once asked a question: if you had all the money in the world, or money wasn't an issue, actually was the question. If money wasn't the issue and time wasn't an issue, if money and time weren't an issue, what would you do? See, my answer was I would manifest an enterprise and I would captain it all over the universe. See, I've always believed that anything is possible. And although I've been challenged against that, my belief that anything was possible always propelled me forward, no matter how many times I got knocked down. And when anything's possible, then whatever we're doing now that someone else already has done, then it definitely is possible. One of the hardest video game achievements that I ever achieved was a game called Titanfall, where you had to beat the developer's time. And I studied and studied and studied, or practiced so hard to do that. And yet it was when I was able to see other videos of people doing it, not only how they did it, but just the fact that they did do it, that I was able to excel and do it myself. So when we see others complete a task or do something, we essentially are able, therefore, to do it ourselves. Another example was a long time ago, the 5 minute mile was something that people worked towards getting, and then one day a man broke it, and he broke the 5 minute, the 5 mile minute, no, the 5 minute mile. Anyways, yeah, the 5 minute mile. And therefore, in the years to come after that, many more people broke it, because once you've seen someone do it, you essentially have, therefore, the experience of witnessing, and perhaps even the experience of doing it, and meaning that you've seen someone do it, so you have the experience of that, and therefore it makes it considerably more obtainable. So remember, when you are doing something and you're working hard, and the people who are watching, you are rippling through them. So with this being said, spend time in wonderment and pondering what are the amazing things that you would like to see. And assuming they don't interfere with someone else's free will, and therefore the betterment of all, then anything is possible. So with that being said, we're going to move into a couple transitional changes that I perhaps foresee. And or not even perhaps foresee. We're definitely seeing the top one on the list right now, and that's for banks to become service providers. See, as I mentioned, this is a transitional change, meaning in between now and what we're essentially experiencing, and what we're going to eventually get into when it goes into the 5D, 6D, and wherever it is, when we're through the process that we're experiencing now. But in that meantime, we may still require some sort of currency in the form of a monetary system. And if that is true, then I definitely see banks changing their role in our communities. Banks currently are owned by, not the government, and they're run by not the government, and they've essentially been used to control us. But I see us moving into a place where, for those who still require to have that currency, that they'll have the opportunities to work with banks in order to improve their lives at their speed, wherever they're standing on that monopoly board. This leads us into see or to realize that everyone will have a home should they choose. And that's so important, I believe, is to eliminate homelessness. But eliminating homelessness is only done if everyone is able to have a home and essentially not be forced to slave and trade away all of your time. Just like that movie, I think it was called Time with Justin, with that NSYNC guy, whatever his name was, had to do with time, trading your life for time. So we'll no longer be trading our life for time, and we'll all have an opportunity to not own a home, but to have a home, to live within a home, to be protected by the walls of a home. Furthermore, this will allow for community-based living. So right now, our communities are mapped in trying to condense as much of the population into small areas. And I foresee more so that we'll go back to smaller communities living together, perhaps even villages, because when you look at the amount of the land on this planet, and I'm not saying we have to go live everywhere, but we'll live within nature. We'll be surrounded by nature. We'll be surrounded by trees. We won't be bulldozing and flattening large, massive mile areas and then putting concrete everywhere. Perhaps we'll by then have the ability to bilocate, so we won't even need the cars. But we'll have a considerable ability to disperse our populations. I once heard that you could take every person in the world, 8 billion people, and you could put them all on this, I think at the time it was the peninsula of Baja or whatever, but we'll throw it into there that perhaps you could give everyone land and a house, and we could put them all in America, for example. That's even more like everyone could have acreage, and everyone in the world could live in America, for example. Like, there is an immense amount of land, and well, there is frigid land and really hot land and all this stuff. I foresee a lot of those environmental issues being rebalanced as Gaia rebalances herself. So there'll definitely be a considerable amount of more land for people to live in, and therefore that'll allow us to live in smaller communities where we are self-sustaining, where we create our own food, where we create our own communities, where we ourselves have become healers, knowing more about how we heal as opposed to giving our power away to a white lab coat. And so these smaller based community livings will essentially give us a stronger community, but more importantly, stronger children, stronger parents, stronger neighbors, and we'll have that chance to truly get to know each other. With that being said, no, I see a future where no one works for anyone else. Means that we don't have corporations that are employing thousands of workers who are dependent on that corporation for survival. That people will be, in a sense, self-employed and self-sustaining. That you may have a baker baking for your community, and that's all they do is they bake whatever quota that they've determined that they want to bake for that day, and then they distribute it out throughout the community. One of the interesting things about the word communism is it's connected to the word community. See, you can call them so-called leaders, have really demonized the word communism, and they've got us to believe that that word means something a lot different from what it is. They've misread or misexplained communism with dictatorships and totalitarianism, and actually communism is simply working as a community, supporting each other, and no one works for another, because we would live in a world where, or we will live in a world where we take what we need and we leave the rest. That no one's needing to take more, and that we are, as a people, surviving or thriving, more importantly, together. And so wouldn't that be amazing that you have what you need every day of your life without the concern of, where am I going to get food? Where am I going to get this or that? Now, this will allow more people to do the jobs they love. So the artists will be supported, because art is very important. Art is a creative part of our existence. It's a big reason why Homo sapiens exist, is to co-create with God, as we are perspectives of God. You could say that God is viewing through us, and when we create, we are definitely doing our work, and we're allowing the love, which is the currency of energy, the currency of life, to flow through us. And when we create new things, when we express ourselves in dance and music and theater and however it is that you choose to create yourself, writing and even making this video, we are working and co-creating with God to create these creations, and then therefore rippling out. And that we will have the time to do all of these different things, such as photography is even one, or just experiencing whitewater rafting or skydiving, whatever you wish, creating those experiences. I would also say that is also part of creating. And parents will be able to be parents. They'll be able to spend as much as of their time that they choose with their children, and therefore their children will grow up more loved and more safe and secure than ever before, not worrying about whether or not their parents had to go off and be away for work. As I've talked about in the past before, when I was in Japan, my host father, he went to work on Monday through Friday for almost 17 hours a day, and his 3-year-old daughter rarely saw him. And I'm sure that's a common story throughout the world, of barely seeing your parents, and therefore parenting really isn't even happening then. And so therefore parents will be able to be parents, and teachers will be able to be teachers as well. Just imagine that parents play more of an active role in their child's life of educating and rearing them. And for those topics and situations where they don't know about it, that they then go to a teacher so that the teacher can teach that particular subject, or perhaps a elderly person who's done that for all of their job experience, and learn from them. It definitely creates a more harmonious community based living. And so parents being allowed to be parents and having the time, that's definitely going to improve. Having time. So for parents to have time to be parents, that is just phenomenal. And this will essentially lead into Planned Parenthood. Now, this is not the Planned Parenthood that they're talk about, or how they've distorted it out on the world at the moment, because I'm not definitely for that. But the Planned Parenthood that I talk about is the Planned Parenthood of when parents can actually sit down, the mother and father, and discuss and talk and come to an agreement and make the arrangements and get it all ready, and learn what they need to learn and have the structures in place and be living where they need to live, and perhaps even have two women having children at the same time, so the children can grow up as friends, and so many different aspects. But planning to be parents will also be an important part of us moving forward. And this goes off the deep end a little bit. However, conceiving children, from what I understand as well, isn't also what we thought. So we have many different ideas of what reality really is, and even how we conceive children, the story that they told us about how all of that works, isn't how it really works. And to me, that is absolutely fascinating. And it definitely helps us understand, well, why many women have challenges giving birth. And perhaps there's a lot more to that story. And when we start to learn that story, perhaps that'll even help us release that shame and guilt that some people have experienced by being unable to conceive, and shaming or feeling bad about that. So, yeah, as I said, I'm not going to explain that, but yeah, even as I wrote down here, even how a child is conceived is untrue. And moving forward from there, our connection with Source will grow stronger. And what does that mean? That means our connection to God. One of the fallacies that we were taught is that we needed to have someone in between us. We needed to have a pastor or a pope or a priest or some other religious figure be the one that needs to tell us what is happening. Even other people channeling. See, I believe that each of us has a direct connection to God, and it's simply been, you can call it, the receiver has been off the hook for a while due to the fact that the matrix was distorting our signal. Yet when and as the matrix, which is dissolving right now, just hold that there for you, it's dissolving right now. There's actually a large force of light workers on this planet who have been working for years, a long time, and we're at the precipice of being released from the matrix right now. Excuse me, I'm gonna have to take a little bit of a drink because I'm talking pretty fast. And so, as I was saying, there's a large force of light workers and light beings, and basically people of the light who are working to restore our sovereignty. And we definitely have our own work to do ourselves, and I'm going to get into that at the end. However, our connection to Source will strengthen, and therefore we'll get more of the answers of when we need it and how we need it, and like when we need it. Like, we'll get the answers when we need them, rather than having to go to books and study a lot of facts and figures and memorize your times tables and do a lot of memorization, and no more tests at school, in the sense of no more memorization tests. And yeah, that's definitely going to be a lot better as well. So when you need to have a skill, it'll be easier to develop that skill, not only because you'll have more time, but also because you'll have that connection to God, to Source, and that'll be direct. So you could even say, and I'll add that on, that the amount of people going to church on Sundays will decrease because we'll have that direct connection to God 24/7. We still may have holidays or holy days. That's actually what that word is holy days. It's not, they sum it up to mean holidays, but perhaps we'll have our days that where we revere and where we, you know, give our gratitude to God, but yet just like all things, we can do that every day. One of the cool things, and I'm adding this in that's not on my list right now, is perhaps, and this is my thought myself, and I can do this now if I want, but perhaps it'll be more openly accepted. But rather than having birthdays as the day that we celebrate that, oh, I'm another year old, because that's another thing, we won't have time the same way at all. Perhaps when we have those days when we're celebrating our birth, it'll be more about celebrating our parents for the day that they decided to commit their energies to rearing and raising and educating a new child coming into the world. So that's one thing that I think would be phenomenal, is to change it over from a me, I have a birthday, as opposed to thank you for bringing me into the life. Thank you for changing your life. Because as I said before, one of the things that I think is when parents become parents, they should dedicate, and I use the word should, yes, okay, that's all right for me. Parents should dedicate themselves to be parents, and honestly, if they're not ready to be parents, they should never have been parents in the first place. Now, that's a blatant thing, and I know things happen and all that lovely stuff, but as we move forward, perhaps we'll be given the opportunity, not through that A word that I don't even want to use, but through the decision to stay away from parenting if we're not ready. And yeah, moving on from there, I know that's a little bit tricky when it comes to all of that parenting stuff. I'm just basically saying the way that I say it. I think that if people want to be parents, they should be parents, dedicating their or a large portion of their life to being parents and staying away from working all the time or trying to have your own life that is separate from your family life and stuff like that. And that, yeah, more time, it's all good. With that being said, our creative abilities. See, as I mentioned before, our creativity is one of our most powerful aspects of a human or Homo sapien. I keep making that, I need to make that distinction again. And so our creative abilities will be significantly enhanced. See, not only will we have that ability to co-create with Source, we'll also have that ability to follow our intuition and to make those mistakes. See, when children are younger, they paint and they create and they color outside the lines and they use whatever colors they want and they just go all over because they're just creating and they're not concerned about the outcome, versus school. Yes, I repeated that 3 times. School teaches us, or more importantly, it forces us into the lines. It forces us to color within the lines. It forces us to stand in the lines and be stuck in a box. And for most people, they get stuck in a box. And while there is a definite push for enhancing one's creativity and using creativity to learn, I believe even as adults, we will have a lot more time to be creative. I foresee healing centers that are based on healing and creative arts, and that adults will have that time and perhaps even participate it with their children. Imagine a room of 50 men, and I'm putting a outrageous example, but 50 men and their children all sitting there, you know, dressing up dolls or coloring with crayons or like whatever you want to imagine. But imagine just the far out ideas of parents with their children's creating. And that will lead to a lot more love. And that's by far the best blessing that I think that we're moving into, is we're going to reconnect with one another truly, not with lust, not with sex, not with romantic relationships, but loving each other, truly loving each other, like truly knowing each other, to connect with that love loving your partner just like you love your mailman kind of love. Like that type of deep love, but not just between, people that you are in love with or that are in your life, but for those people that are the cashier or the person who's making the trinket that you're considering sharing with, that you're considering taking. And so, first of all, love is an aspect of God. And so, right there, as we share more love, as we get into more harmonious communities, then we'll be able to reconnect more with God. And in a sense, that love will open us up to new relationships as well. I have these videos that there's one called Love Beyond Bounds, and then and then there's another one called The New Era of Relationships. And these ones explore having different relationships as for the family structure. See, we were forced into a situation where one man, one woman cohabitate, they raise the children, one works, and then later both worked, and then later everyone was working. And I foresee a space where perhaps there are relationships where there is one man and two women, or there's two women and two men in one family. It doesn't have to be about the sexual portion of it. It can be about the structure and the sharing and the love. I've talked previously about a show called Sister Wives, where they were talking about the sister wife. When interviewed why they wanted to be a sister wife, they explained that it was because they also liked having their man, their husband, but then they also wanted to have their best friend. And they found in other relationships that, a lot of times there was a lot of issues and they couldn't have that. And so they were willing to try and explore. And whilst this worked for some people, the show definitely showed it didn't work for all. But we could possibly live in a world where love is shared differently. And I see that happening more and more. I watched this show, I can't remember what it was called, but it was a space show, a futuristic space show. And there was this tanker or this ship that lived on the far edges of the universe. And there was the crew, they had three men and three women, and they were all in a relationship together. So they loved each other, all of them, and that helped reduce the amount of jealousy. It helped reduce a lot of the different hostilities, and for them it worked. And as I said, depending on the people and how healed they are and what they want, I think there's enough people in this world. We've got 8 billion supposedly, and a lot other people in other parts. And there's also many humans that are Homo sapiens that perhaps aren't on Earth right now. And so with all that being said, that there is a possibility for us to reach beyond the stars and look for love beyond bounds. So I highly recommend that you go and listen to those, because I think that, and I'll link one of them at least here up top on the right, and the other one I'll put at the end, because I think exploring possibilities is so fundamentally important to how we move forward with our life. And so where does this all go? The best place yet. The absolute best place yet. The whole reason I wrote or even recorded this whole thing. We go to healing. True healing. Not covering it up, dealing with it later, not suppressing it until we blow up, not paying a psychologist a whole bunch of money to tell you things. I mean, healing, like actually letting go of all that past trauma, living in the now, not having future expectations and hopes that, things are going to get better, or to actually be healed. And when we're healed, when that healing occurs, it's going to be divine, and we are divine. We already are divine. We're just waking up to that divinity now, to the awareness of that divinity. And I truly foresee a time where we are in such a state of healing that allows us to create whatever it is that we desire to create. We want a boat to sail around the ocean for a month, that we'll have that opportunity, that we'll create that opportunity ourselves. We won't need to go slave away for 10 years to buy a boat or 25 years to buy a house. We'll be able to do that in basically empowered by our own creative ability, supported by healing. And now, healing isn't something that I believe is just going to happen overnight. I think this events that we're going through right now, wherever you are in the world, whatever news is telling you what events is happening, I think that all of that is part of healing, because even a lot of these events that are happening, they're giving people the opportunity to search within themselves for the strength to endure and forge themselves into something greater than they were ever possibly aware that they could do. And so this healing comes with a most important task. And this task, I feel that we're going to be spending an awful lot of time, well, while we have time perhaps, essentially investing our attention and efforts in. And it's not, in my opinion, going to be work. It's actually going to be a great opportunity to express love, and this is forgiveness. See, forgiveness is a fundamental part of healing, because in order for us to truly heal, we have to let go. But it's not just about letting go and saying, whatever, and saying, oh, that doesn't bother me anymore, and trying to push it off, because that's what we've been doing for a long time and it didn't work. So healing is forgiving those not only who affected us, but also for the things that the things that we didn't like about ourselves, or the things that we criticized about ourselves. And so when we forgive, we release those traumas, and that allows us to definitely move forward. You can imagine it like a hot air balloon, and it's on the ground and it has a whole bunch of tethers on it. The tethers in the front, they're expectations and hopes and things you think are going to happen. And the tethers on the back of the hot air balloon, well, those are all your past traumas and, the jokes that someone made about you when you were in grade 4, or something that happened when you were on your first date, or when your wife or your husband yelled at you and you got very scared, or when you were injured in any number of ways. I don't want to go into too much projecting, but those are all the traumas and the experiences we've had. And so look at those tethers as, once they're cut, once they're broken because we've healed them, the hot air balloon will zoom up into the sky, and we'll be able to experience that exhilaration of being free, truly free. And that is healing. And the higher the hot air balloon goes, the more energy we put into that system, then the more speed and the higher vibration and the height, greater the height that hot air balloon has. And so with this being said, one of the most important first steps of this whole healing process, and we will do this a lot more, is holding ourselves accountable for our own actions. And so I made an audio earlier about how there are forces behind that hold us back, and they essentially try to distort, distract, corrupt, they sabotage. All of that stuff, when we hold ourselves accountable, that stuff has no more power over us. And perhaps that's where we'll end this, is by saying, what I foresee in the future is, as we hold ourselves more accountable and we increase our awareness of all the things that are happening, and we do it without fear, we do it without concern or worry. We trust in our intuition. We trust in what feels good. We reconnect with our bodies. We delete that programming that we learned in elementary and we learned in preschool and grade 1 and 2 of asking to go to the washroom, teachers telling us we can wait. when we release all of that and we reconnect back with our intuition, our body, our heart, our mind, our chakras, when we realign those chakras perhaps a lot better, when they're spinning in the right directions, when we're aligned with God, not a religious God, when we're aligned with that inner God within us, that we will therefore then truly be healed and therefore able to be the beings that we were intended to be, that we haven't been for hundreds of thousands to millions of years. That's a huge, long, big number. But in my son's class, they were teaching him how to write out the Zeptilian number, which I don't know how many zeros that has, but it has a whole bunch of numbers. So we can definitely have an easier time to accept that we will have that ability to remember our past, remember our experiences, remember who we are, and therefore we will know where we're going. So, with that being said, I hope, I know, not I don't even hope this time. I know that spending our time thinking about all the positive, amazing, beautiful things that are possible and potential and, yeah, amazing, I know that that definitely adds to our energy. It empowers us. It makes that inner flame that we have within us, that inner spark. You can kind of look at that spark as the spark or the energon spark that was within the Transformers. I highly recommend watching Transformers 1. It's an animated movie for children, or maybe it's not even for children, because there's actually a really big, strong message in there about our inner spark, and that spark's coming back online. So after you, well, whenever you have the possibility, go and watch Transformers 1. It's a phenomenal movie. I keep wanting to watch it again and talk about it because there's so many things in that movie. There's so many, yeah, there's just so much in that, so many golden nuggets in that movie. And yeah, so one of the things that I will leave with as I leave is an amazing thank you for making it this far. Thank you for investing your time and your attention in yourself. And remember, when you invest your time in yourself, you essentially invest your time in your loved ones, in your communities. You invest your love in even your enemies, because your enemies are only your enemies because that's your current state. And when we change our current state, we'll find that the whole world, the whole reality, the whole universe, the whole omniverse, like just everything around you will change. So I'm going to, at the end of this video, I'm going to link my playlist for I4C. And I highly encourage you to go and listen to that. Now those audios are scripted audios using hand-selected, co-created images that I made with Jasper AI. And so they are made by a human, yes, or Homo sapien, correction. But go and watch them and listen to them. And, after each one is over, spend a little time imagining in your mind, because imagination is what is key to allow for all of what I just said to become reality. And so truly use your imagination and pause it after each of the I4C series, or if just choose whichever one you want. And after it's over, imagine for yourself what the future could hold. And then think about that and giggle and smile and laugh and cry. Cry if something's overly passionate to you or you're pushed to it. Like, go with the flow of your emotions, and let's together imagine a beautiful new world where anything is possible, because miracles don't happen to you. We create miracles, because miracle is just a state of mind. And well, turning water into wine was a miracle. Walking on water, some thought was a miracle. Well, first of all, there's technology. However, there's also our abilities, our unknown, untapped abilities that some people have already started tapping into for generations. And so it's about time that we start creating our own miracles and then just realizing, well, that's just the nature of our being. So thank you so much for sharing your attention with me. As I said, I tried to make this as short as possible, but it looks like I hit 50 minutes. Anyways, thank you so much. I love you so much, especially that we are all coming together and we're going to make it to the moon. Oh, which, by the way, I'll add that we will be going to the moon for sure. Mars as well, Jupiter, all across lots of places. You know, if you want to climb Mount Olympus on Mars, that's going to happen too. All right, good night, sleep tight, and let the wonderment and your imagination bite, or at least pinch you in the ass. Have a good night.